God bless them.
I'd rather get a revision on my prints too late than have to deal with all that.
Yeah. Ooh, let's go Last of Us. Oh my God.
Thank you. That was the first thing that crossed my head. I'm like, this is what we're messing with now? Like, I'm less worried about AI. Stop messing around with mushrooms. I don't need that. I'll pay for regular installation. That's fine, right?
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know.
Well, shit, we're all out of work. Thanks a lot, man. I was trying to be fucking happy about the Midwest getting away from this stuff, and you could be right. You could be. Yeah, that would have been one for that. I wasn't. I know I normally do that, but I wasn't doing that. I was actually just chatting with you.
That's how we usually start.
My fault entirely. But
So, well, do you want to do green building?
no, let's do green construction. Yeah, that's
Green
fine.
construction. All right. Go. Fuck it.
We'll do the same thing again.
Oh, fucking Christ.
I blame whiskey. Whiskey's always the problem.
Whiskey.
folks.
I can't blame that.
No, you can't. That's for sure, buddy.
Give a fuck.
But yes, maybe a little bit. I know you're still on your medications from your surgery, which means no drinking for Joe.
No drinking.
But I am having a drink. And welcome everybody on that note to the I Shower After Work podcast for all things trades and trades related.
Yeah, buddy.
We are back in the alternate job trailer today. John's finally out of the house. Welcome, buddy.
It's good to be. I think I'm going to start calling this one the East Side Job Trailer.
Sure, we can do that. Yeah, that
East and West.
East and West does make sense. All right, going forward, coming to you from the East Side job trailer today.
The East Side. Oh God, it's nice to be out of the house.
I'm sure
I'm
it is,
happy
buddy.
to be back in the East Side.
I would ask you how your week was, as I normally do, but I know how your week was.
It was all right.
No updates?
It was all right. It was just able to do things a little bit more. I'm just taking care of stuff, so it was a good week.
I feel very bad. We've talked about it so much. It sucks being injured. One of these days, you'll be back into your way.
Oh yeah, it's getting better day by day.
Well, that's all you can really ask for, right?
Right.
Buddy, I had an idea for today. I know we talked about this a little bit before, so you kind of have a vague idea. We hear the term green construction all the time. It's thrown around a lot these days, right? And we thought, why not we take a little time, find out what it really means, how it affects the laws, changes, things like that, what kind of initiatives actually going day to day, like what it's really going to be going forward. And we're not talking about green energy now, folks. We've talked about that before.
Yeah.
Green construction, building materials, processes, things like that are getting to be more popular now, man.
It's becoming a hot topic.
Right. And there's a couple of big ones really on the rise that we're definitely going to get into today. So what do you say, man? Let's just get after it.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
It's definitely an area of focus for businesses now. We've found that it's a big percentage of construction waste, 40% in fact now, that gets either recycled or reused. That's a big number for us now because we talked in a previous episode about how much trash gets created just with construction in general.
A lot, yeah.
Right. And then you factor in all the extra things, let's say greenhouse gases, trash, whatever, that goes into the process of making these things.
Right.
And this has got companies going, we can do it without that. How do we do it without that?
Right.
That's one half of the coin we'll talk about. The other half is how it affects the people building the buildings.
And what that kind of looks like and what that really is and what is actually labeled as green construction.
Yeah, what is considered green construction, right?
Yep.
So have you seen so far anything on any of your job sites that would fall under this category, green construction?
You know, I was trying to think about that, and I don't know if I've actually been on a job site that is labeled a green construction building.
I have. I can say that.
I've seen products that are used for green construction on the job sites. You're talking about, the biggest one that I've seen that takes up a large chunk of a building is insulation.
Definitely. Yep.
Recycled insulation.
Yep.
Beds. So that's made a huge stamp on things. But as far as I was really trying hard to think when I say been on a job that was labeled as green construction, I think of, is this building going for the LEED certification as green construction?
Which is one part of the thing we'll talk about, right?
Right.
Yeah. So your lighting load.
Yep. It's everything.
That's a big one. Yep.
It's the backbone. It's how the building is. I mean, it goes all the way into the materials being used, overall project. It starts at the architects and the designers in order to get an LED. Now, I'm not saying LED, right. LEED.
Yeah, LEED, LEED. Yeah, exactly. And so that's mean, that's a big one here for a lot of businesses in Minnesota, because most big businesses, if you're not talking about industrial or manufacturing, lighting load is a gigantic portion of their draw.
Oh, it's huge.
I mean, motors and heating and air conditioning, sure. Plumbing don't take that much. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
That's a big draw. And if people can get this certification, it sounds like it's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
Right.
The government kickbacks, tax credits,
right,
everything else,
and that's
rebates.
That's what the businesses are looking at, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So,
but let's take a minute to explain what is a green building.
sure.
Right?
Yeah, get after it.
So the green building is a holistic concept that starts at the understanding that the building environment can have profound effects, both positive and negative, on the natural environment around it.
Right, absolutely.
Right? And so, and it impacts the people that are inside the building, of course. But so a green building is this idea and concept of making a building give back and becoming basically a net zero carbon building.
Okay.
That's the idea, right? A lot of these buildings you'll see have like big plant structures on them, big green spaces on top of them. Like they're trying to give back as much to nature as they can.
The one that I said I was on, they had a full-size atrium inside that had like an arborist and florist and stuff that took care of it, that helped with the oxygen in the building, and that was a big part of what they had to have in there for this one that I saw was green construction. So yeah.
And you're seeing them all over the place. These buildings that they intentionally run vines on, they grow vines on them. They have trees planted on top of them.
Right.
You know, you're starting to see it more and more and more, which I think is kind of cool.
Well, it makes sense. Yeah, give a little bit back. Like do what you can, right?
Right.
Yeah, I'm not against any of this, and some of it is so interesting. I mean, we'll get into it here in a few minutes. And then there's a differentiation even in what you explained. There is a green construction aspect where it's the process of building the building and keeping the trash and the carbon, everything to a lowest possible level. And they have lots of ways that they do that. And then there's a green operating building that after it's completed is as close to net zero as they can. Low trash output, things like that. So,
and in order to get some of these certifications, they have to meet those standards, both in and out.
And there's so many standards.
Oh, dude. I looked up. Now, Minnesota doesn't call it the LEED certification.
Yeah, they get some weird number.
B3.
Right? B3, okay. Yeah.
B3 building processes. I downloaded just to see what their initial packet is.
How many pages?
153 pages of shit. Oh my God. I feel for every architect and designer because they have to go through all that.
The bureaucracy of all the things we talk about on our podcast when it comes to like big changes and things like that, it's always just amazing to me how big it is. It's crazy what they want and expect people to learn and go through, and forms for this. Okay.
Jump through this hoop, cut this red tape. Da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, listen, hey man, cheers to actually working for a living and not dealing with that shit.
God bless them.
I'd rather get a revision on my prints too late than have to deal with all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's so many things that they factor in here. So not only impact on the land during the build and after the fact, but they talk about materials that they use and how they manufacture those materials. There's different materials manufactured in different ways, that some are okay and some are not. And then obviously the proper recycling and waste removal and limitation that they want from the construction workers themselves and the companies as they build.
Yep.
Like they've got all this stuff built right into it. I mean, I think they've kind of been doing a lot of that anyway. Like, isn't there normally environmental impacts and testing studies when they're building any building, a house, a big high rise? Like, aren't they already kind of doing that stuff anyway?
Yeah, a little bit. Well, and we're seeing more and more these days that there's a lot of things that are already recycled products coming back onto the job sites.
Oh, hell yeah.
Concrete,
yeah.
perfect to recycle.
Yep.
That can be ground back up, pumped back in,
Yeah.
right? All the metals, copper, steel, aluminum, they all get burnt down, melted back.
Yes, I hear people take copper into the trading place sometimes. I mean, I would never do that sort of thing myself, but I hear about it.
Right.
I think they call it rabbit. I don't know. But
right.
Yeah.
Right. Wink, wink.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. That's right.
But at the same time, like, that's already been going on for a long time.
For sure.
Right.
For sure.
And let's not fool ourselves. This idea of green construction isn't new. It's been happening for 20 years.
Yeah. It seems to have ramped up, especially the last 5.
Yeah, it's becoming more prevalent.
Now, is that because it's actually going to be useful, or is that just a good hot button topic when the election comes around, or within your local city and state elections even?
Oh, it always looks good on paper.
Right.
Right.
But that's the question I'm asking. Do we think this is good on paper, or do we think this is good?
That's a good question, man.
Right. We're going to circle back. That will be a kind of final thought for what we're doing here, right?
Right.
So just as a few examples here, man, I don't know what you looked up, but when I started looking at the green construction, it took me down a road that I'm just going to spend a bit of time on it because I found it fascinating, was the new building materials that are available, that some of them to me are wild.
Yep. I found some that you didn't find.
You found some that I didn't find. Okay, good. All right. I like to hear that. All right, go ahead. What's the first one you saw that we found interesting, man?
Bamboo.
Bamboo. Okay.
Bamboo. I mean, it grows so fast. It's not a wood. Now, people don't understand that bamboo is not a tree.
Right.
It's a grass. Now, it grows 3 feet a day.
It can in ideal conditions, right?
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Right. That's why it was it was dark. Let's go dark here.
Sure, yeah, right off the bat.
It was used as a torture device.
Right.
By the Chinese. They would strap a person down and sit them on top of, or lay them on top of a bamboo shoot, and it'd slowly grow through them.
What a shitty way to go.
Right.
That's a pretty mean torture, man.
Right. That's dark, but it grows so fast, and so the renewability of it is huge. Right.
And like any fiber, they can use it depending on the process they manufacture it and break it down into so many different things.
Yeah, they make it into lumber.
Right, yeah. Like, sure they do. Absolutely.
That's the first one.
Bamboo's a good one, yeah, for sure. I found something similar, and only because I found the tree versus the thing that I found very interesting as far as like new fancy construction materials. Transparent wood.
What the fuck is that?
It's actually a thing. Okay, so they make it out of balsa tree, which also grows fast. Not quite as fast as bamboo. They can regrow a full-size balsa tree in like 4 or 5 years. But still, they use really limited water, so that's why they're good. What they're doing with this is they're stacking these together like laminate, and through a chemical process, they're able to take the color out of the wood almost 100%. It's still a tiny bit hazy, but you can see through it, right? And then they epoxy the whole thing. It's quicker to make than glass. It takes less effort, less energy. It's stronger than glass, and it has heat reflecting effects that keep the heat in, cold out, all that stuff. Now,
that's pretty cool.
It's 3 times the price installed than glass.
Right.
But that's what it is for now.
How long does it last, though?
Oh, it's almost indefinite.
Really?
Yeah. What they said is someone can opt to, every like 5 to 7 years, have someone come out and reglaze the exterior with epoxy. But it's epoxy, man. It's almost completely impervious to everything to start with. That's why they put epoxy on the outside of it.
Oh.
They made clear wood glass windows now.
Transparent wood.
So that was the first one I found I thought was interesting.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
What else you got?
Speaking of insulation, bringing that back up, coming full circle, sheep's wool insulation.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. Grows faster, more natural, doesn't break down like other bio insulations do.
You don't have to manufacture it. It just grows.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Huge cost to that, though.
I would have to think it would take an awful lot of sheep to insulate a house.
Yeah.
And that's just a house, right? Yeah, that one's pretty tough.
Yeah.
But I like that, though. No, sheep, yeah, you're on it. You went down a totally different rabbit hole than I did. That's good. Yeah. I'm glad, man. I like it. I found a really interesting one called Aerogel.
Ooh.
Yeah. So
I've heard of Aerogel.
Yeah, Aerogel. Yeah. So according to the people who manufacture it, one of the hardest and lightest materials in the world because it's made up of 99.8% air. They have some process where they replace the molecules of liquid with air. They stay inside the structure with the tiniest bit of the liquid left that holds everything in place. Apparently, it is the greatest insulation there is.
Yep. But NASA uses the shit out of it.
Yeah, NASA
but it is expensive.
Right, yeah. Unbelievable thermal conductor. Almost considered fireproof. Not completely, but man, it'll burn for a long time before. But yeah, that's right. NASA, a lot of aerospace places use it. Well, if you need to know nothing else, DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Council.
Yep.
The military put in billions.
Oh yeah.
To make this stuff and figure out the best way to have it and use. It's obviously a big material, but as you say, crazy expensive, as most of these are probably going to be, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I thought Aerogel was really interesting.
And then the other one that everybody knows that I found that's pretty kind of, you see it a lot of places, is cork.
Oh yeah, cork.
It grows really fast, and it's self-sustaining, and that's because it's a tree bark. If anybody didn't know, cork is a tree bark.
Yeah, you
Right.
grow cork, right? Yeah.
Right. So, no, it's good for noise sheeting. It's good for sound barrier, insulation, a pretty wide range. There's flooring made out of it. You know,
That sounds like an actual really productive one to have.
Right.
So like I seem to have some that are kind of on the same vein, but a little different. They are using mycelium composites, which is
mushrooms.
fungi, right?
Yep.
Fungus, to make all kinds of insulation within walls. And they're using it along with pellets of what they call feed or nutrient that they mix into concrete. When there's cracks in the concrete, the little feed pellets can break down. The mycelium grows and they have self-healing concrete.
Ooh, let's go Last of Us. Oh my God.
Thank you. That was the first thing that crossed my head. I'm like, this is what we're messing with now? Like, I'm less worried about AI. Stop messing around with mushrooms. I don't need that. I'll pay for regular insulation. That's fine, right?
Yeah, leave it the fuck alone.
But yeah, they can build forms, put this stuff in there, and depending on how they want to grow it and the environment, they just let it grow inside the form as if you'd pour in concrete. Some of it is strong enough to be used as actual building materials, but most of it they're using as insulation. So your wall could be ready to rock and roll. They go in each space, spray, make sure they tape that little hole off. They sprayed it in. Just like spray foam, you just wait for a while. It takes a while, right? Depending on the conditions, like weeks sometimes. But man, like you just put a drop in there or whatever it is, just grows insulation in your wall. And it doesn't break down because it uses the moisture in the air
Yeah.
to just keep feeding itself.
Okay, problem with that.
Oh, there's problems with it, certainly. We're going to get to that.
The one thing that where I automatically go is the buildings that we're building anymore have become so airtight that we're controlling the moisture. There's almost no moisture.
Oh, right. You would have to factor that in if you wanted to use this sort of system. This wouldn't be for a giant building. They consider this more for hospitals and labs and things where it's a small space. Again, The Last of Us, right? Like,
Oh my God.
yeah, where they're considered
fuck.
using it, it's like, are you crazy?
Yeah.
But even if you were to use it in a home with no moisture, when it eventually grows to space and then unfortunately will die,
Right.
it's just like foam insulation in there, even though it's dead now. It's
Yeah,
essentially,
true.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so between that and the self-healing concrete thing is crazy to me.
So you bring up a good point that actually struck me of something that I saw. There's a company now that is designing concrete to go basically precast structures, right? Precast concrete they embed it with moss pores,
Very similar thing, yeah.
and then it'll actually grow moss on it, which insulates it, provides oxygen. It's part of the green building structures. Right. So you could very well see somewhere along the lines of an entire building that just looks green. It just has a thin layer of moss on it. Right. It doesn't damage the concrete because moss doesn't dig in, has no root structure. Right. But
Very shallow root structure. Like very.
and they're not even called roots on moss.
Oh, perfect. There you go.
Right. So they just latch onto the concrete, and they basically prep the concrete with a coating that allows them to stick harder. And then it just sits there. It doesn't get long. It doesn't overgrow. It just coats it, which is actually a natural insulator.
Yeah, sucks up CO2.
Sucks up
Kicks
CO2.
out air, right?
Provides oxygen. It's pretty cool.
I like those sort of things. I'm totally behind that sort of stuff.
Don't fuck with mushrooms. Don't.
Yeah, man, don't be much. Yeah, that,
Like,
when I
great fucking
found that
idea.
part, it scared the shit out of me.
Yeah. All I see is Last of Us just fucking firing off. And,
That's it, man. What else you got for us?
you kind of reached what I saw.
All right. I had one more kind of fun one here.
All right, do it.
That they call Richlite.
Ooh, Richlite.
Richlite. So Richlite is what they call a durable paper composite. But what it is, they use fully recycled paper and cardboard materials of whatever kind.
Oh, sure.
They put it through a process to make it basically what we used to call like a pressed wood.
Particle board?
Particle board, thank you.
Okay.
Only the process they use now is such small pieces and such high pressure. It's so rigid. It's basically like having a sheet of 4x8 plywood in different depths. They can use it to make studs, and it's just as strong. They're making it out of paper, recycled paper.
More like an MDF structure, it sounds
Kind of. Not expensive to make, not expensive to manufacture, and the offset between using the recycled materials and not using new materials, it's basically neutral the second you put it on the wall.
No way.
Yeah. So we get like
Okay.
we've said before,
What's the name of that again?
Richlite. Richlite.
Probably lighter than regular lumber, too.
Oh my God, it probably doesn't weigh. It can't weigh as much as a piece of plywood, like for sure, right?
Wow.
Because they can make the same, depending on what you're using it for. I mean, if you're let's just talk if they were using it as a wall bag or something, you're using it as plywood.
Sure.
It could be much thinner and still be cuttable,
Right.
lighter to carry around, easier to throw up, lighter to manufacture and move to where you're going. Like the whole thing about it, if this took off, that one could be a real replacement for plywood pretty fast.
Wow.
Yeah. Costs less, easier to make, faster to make. Everything about it is better.
That's impressive.
Yeah. So that was the best one I found was that Richlite stuff.
That one actually is, that's the best one that I've heard of.
Right. Yeah.
For sure.
That one's fun.
But let's not forget. Now that's something, there's been a big push recently. It's really taken off.
I know where you go and keep going, buddy.
3D printing.
3D printing.
Right. You got 3D printed concrete buildings. They're 3D printing entire houses.
Well, I can tell you, buddy, as of this recording, it was 3 days ago, a report from Reuters, however you want to pronounce that. Reuters. I'm from Canada. I'll say Reuters if you want. They started construction on a 100-home community in Texas, just outside of Austin, I believe it was. Austin.
Development?
Yeah, they call it the Wolf Ranch. 100 units. They're almost finished. They use a 45-foot diameter 3D printer. They printed the exterior of every home.
Yep. I've seen that.
So
I've seen reports on that, videos on that.
100 homes. Now, they still have to put up texture on the inside and siding on the outside and all that, right? But the walls themselves or whatever, right? They built 200 homes in less than 2 years with, like, I think 20 people administering the machine.
That's impressive.
I hate that it cuts down on all the man and woman hours that we get as construction workers, right?
Yep.
But man, if the weight is, because real live people could do the framing, which is basically what it is, of these homes, faster than 2 years for that many homes in a development. No problem. But the people that it would take,
right?
It's not 20 people.
No, I'd like to know more details about it. The structural stability of these buildings, side wind shear force, stuff like that, because we live where there's wind.
My understanding is the interior structure that the 3D prints. So it prints walls. Some cases, it can even make truss-like shapes for the rooftop and things like that. Hurricane winds is my understanding, buddy.
That's impressive.
It's a concrete wall built into the ground a couple feet because the printer starts below ground on footings and builds up.
They actually put footings in.
Apparently it's hurricane level winds, but that's that part of your building.
Sure.
It could still tear off roofs and siding and damage the inside, but your structure, the backbone of the skeleton of your home would survive.
So what do you think about when we're talking 3D printing? Because you can pretty much 3D print anything.
Anything now, yeah.
Right? So how do you feel about 3D printed marbleized countertops?
I'd be fine with it.
Yeah. Do you think that it'd help the construction space? You're talking an eighth of the weight. I'm more worried about the food grade. How porous is this thing?
That would depend, I assume, on, because there is various materials they use for 3D printing, right?
Yep.
I'm not familiar with all of them, but I mean, I know it's lots of different kinds of things. It would have to be a matter of print it to size and shape as you need it, which we'll talk about that bonus of doing in a minute. I'm sure they could seal it with something food grade.
I would hope so.
I mean, after you get your product, they'd have some sort of clear epoxy, something they could seal it with, so it was food grade, right?
Right.
And even then, I mean, I've got that butcher block piece that I put in my kitchen when I remodeled. I just have to put mineral oil on that and keep it clean.
Yeah, I mean...
Well, that's why I used in not even just this house, but my last countertop I put in my old home. They were both that manufactured quartz.
Yep.
Because it's yeah, it's not as nice as granite. Okay, sure. A granite countertop would look amazing.
Right.
But it's completely non-porous.
Yeah.
You just wipe it down. It doesn't stain. It doesn't warp if you put heat on it. I think it takes 600 or 700 degrees. It's crazy.
Yep.
I'd be fine with the 3D one.
Yep.
But and I saw something about what you're talking about. What I saw that I found interesting about the 3D printed one, they can do it on site if you want with some of them.
Right.
If it's a wonky shape that you built at a restaurant or even in your home because you got a bunch of space and you made a weird, it could just build one piece. They can bring the machine in and it'll build it right there.
Right.
Then there'd be the matter of, okay, coloring, sealing, things like that. But that's what you're dealing with now.
Right.
And how much less weight did you say? Like a third?
Like an eighth.
Oh, like an eighth. Yeah, see, that's...
I mean...
Anybody who's put in a heavy countertop, that's the hassle, like muscling that thing into place.
Right. They're light. I mean, they are light.
Eighth is a lot. That's...
I mean, when you're talking a standard, a 10-foot slab of granite that's 1.5 inches thick, that's fucking heavy. It takes 4 guys.
Oh, dude, yeah, it took 4 of us to get mine in. My 2 pieces, yeah.
And, I mean, you take it down to being able to have 2 guys do it all day long without strain. I mean, come on.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about the guys and gals who are putting countertop in every day. Yeah, that's right. You're not just doing that once and you're good.
Right. On some of these high rises, we're doing 50, 80 units.
Right.
256 units that I just got done doing. I mean, those guys were...
Right.
Those poor bastards.
Humping. Well, and I just thought about something you say that too. I had to carry mine 7 feet from my door at the same level in and put it on my countertop.
I was here.
Yeah. The old house I was in, it was that split level townhome.
Right.
That was a nightmare to get up and around the corner. But what if it was taking it onto a freight elevator and then down a hallway and around a corner? Like, yeah, I was thinking of a simple one like mine.
Even talk about shipping, right? You're loading up a truck. You can get 3 times as many of these things in a fucking truck.
Right.
And
before people criticize John's math there, it's because they still take up a certain amount of size.
Right.
It can't be 8 times.
Right.
It's not just a weight thing. They're still there, right? They still physically exist in real space.
Right.
So yeah, I think 3D printing, I think that's going to be really huge coming up, man.
I think it is. I think the technology is really, really taken off, and it's probably going to make construction products. It's going to change the landscape of what we're putting in. It really is.
How can it not?
Yep.
And bringing it back to what we were kind of getting started with, the business of the whole thing of using these materials is what it's coming down to.
Right.
Because before, you'd have the construction side of things, the contractor building the building to a certain standard, and then what the end user wanted and was going to use the building for. And even though they worked together before, it's so much more important to them now because the infrastructure in the building has to be there for some of these extras later to save recycling, energy costs, things like that.
Right.
There's no more just leaving vague provisions, as an adult would say it. To do that, you really have to think of the whole process going through just to get a building built if you want one of these quote unquote, here quote, green certifications, whatever it happens to be in your state, So, but yeah, man, I think our climate is tough for the 3D printing here because our construction season is so short for doing that outside. I assume that machinery don't like rain and snow and stuff, right?
Right.
Temperature swings of 50 degrees in a day sometimes. Like, I don't think it's real convenient for stuff like that.
Well, I mean, they're 3D printing concrete.
Basically,
we pour concrete all year round up here. What would be the difference?
Yeah, I make a good point, buddy. It's tough to argue that. In my head, when I initially said it, it seemed different. But now that you say that, you could be right. We pour concrete all year here. Yeah, I guess because that's all they're doing is just the machine. They're just feeding the machine from a truck, right? Yeah, you make a good point, buddy. That could be it. Well,
I don't know.
Well, shit, we're all out of work. Thanks a lot, man. I was trying to be fucking happy about the Midwest getting away from this stuff, and you could be right. They could be. It
could be knocking on our doors real fast.
Knocking on our doors. If you got any comments about that, reach out, isawpodcast.com. I'm sure somebody's going to have something they want to say about that.
I would hope so.
So that's kind of some of the fun stuff that was going on or whatever.
Right.
It depends on the day and the week and the month, if you even have the ability to dig into it on the dumpster fire that we always say is the internet, of what each state or county or the country at large wants this as a percentage of buildings that are getting built.
Right.
I mean, we've seen in the past where there's things they forced companies to do as far as what they wanted to see. So things like affirmative action back in the day, harassment laws later on, like they've made changes that they needed to make, and it seems they need to make some of these ones now in order to keep construction from, I don't know, completely filling every landfill there is.
Yeah, I mean they do and they don't. I mean some spaces are really good for it, I think. But what I found is the more and more green construction buildings that I looked at seem to be leaning on the side of governmental buildings or state buildings, police stations, libraries, administrative buildings.
Yeah, there's lots of those in every state, right? Like,
right.
For sure.
And that's what I saw. What were you looking at?
What I came across was it just seemed that there was so many different initiatives that I found that were trying to make not only the building of the buildings, but the building's operation after the fact to lower emissions. So, I mean, at large, the internet basically lumps all of construction and the operation of buildings after they're complete into the CO2 emissions caused by construction. I think it's a stupid lump together. It really bothered me, but I checked multiple places and they all sort of lump the two of them together as far as CO2 goes.
Yeah.
So I guess I get it. If you were just going to take the construction of the building, well, then that would be construction at large. They take the whole project as one, the emission cost it took to build it and then what it's going to create. So they figure between construction and the emissions, that's 27% in the States of the annual CO2 emissions are construction and the buildings that they build.
Well, that's because people don't realize we're still what it takes to build a building is there's a lot of motors, a lot of engines, there's a lot of diesel,
right?
Like the trucking, the building, the land, excavators.
Yeah. So I bring that up because the initiatives seem to be to try to lower that number.
Yep.
At the end of the day, they look like they all came down to CO2. It's all about emissions. It's all about emissions.
It's all about CO2. That's our carbon footprint.
Right. I get that.
That's what they're focused on. So
that's what they care.
hard.
But just as like a quick comparison, so 27%, let's round that out. Let's call it 25, a quarter of all emissions. Okay. Even to change that by 1% is a gigantic lowering in the amount of not only emissions to build a building, but to run it.
Right.
That 1% of that is massive on like a national scale. That's crazy.
Yeah, but how does the whole net zero thing work when a building's being built and then it's supposed to be net zero when it's done?
Yeah. So, okay. Unpopular opinion. I haven't had any lately. I'm getting back to it.
Okay.
I don't believe net zero is really a thing for most businesses.
I don't think it is.
And when I say not a thing, I think for most businesses, it's virtually fucking impossible to get down to zero.
Yep.
I'm sorry to tell you. You can't recycle everything going in and out of the door.
Right.
You can't, right? People have to get to work.
Yep.
You're not picking them all up in a bus, which, by the way, a bus full of 20 people is probably close to 10 of them driving their car anyway,
right?
If not worse, right? Burning more fuel, worse emissions. Like, it just seems impossible to me that they can suggest this. And when even the suggestion and looking into it and trying these initiatives, even if they fail, they're learning as they go. I get that. That's costing men and women jobs.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's the antithesis of bringing this up. Like, we're a construction podcast at the end of the day. These things are fun to talk about. But I mean, especially between the 3D printing and all these initiatives to try to go, it's not helping the day-to-day worker at all.
Yeah, I mean, we've touched on all that before, and it's a constant battle where is our jobs being replaced or are they just supplementing to something in that might help out with the shortage of workers that we're getting? That's a constant battle. I mean, we could go rounds about that, so I'm not going to really focus on that. But I have to agree. I like the idea of green construction. I like the thought.
In the grand scheme, yes.
Yes. What it's taking and what we're going to have to sacrifice in order to get there, I'm afraid there's going to be a lot of shitty corners cut.
I believe there is too.
And I don't think we're going to get the quality of craftsmanship with it.
Yeah. Do we start to have quasi-futuristic buildings that all look exactly the same, just in different sizes and shapes?
Right.
Because if we just manufacture this one exterior en masse, it saves all the extra stuff. So everybody just gets the same siding now.
Right.
Mm.
At that point, then every building is just a box.
It sounds a little communist Russia to me.
A little bit.
You know, I'm not a conspiracy guy, but it sounds a little communist to me all of a sudden. Well, we may as well just do the same thing with cars. We'll just paint all the cars the same. Like,
well, I tell you what, with all the hoops to jump through to get that certification for it, it might as well be. I mean, holy shit, the laundry list of shit that you got to do. I mean, from everything from the design to the build to the planning to the structure to the pieces and parts that you buy, how you dispose of the waste on the job site. I mean, it's literally controlled by politics through and through.
Oh, it definitely is. I had a note I wrote to myself. I almost forgot here. How many of the people making these decisions are flying in private fucking jets?
Oh, yeah.
Most of the people?
Yep.
Not the ones suggesting them. I'm sure there's good grassroots people on the ground who have the environment in mind. Good on them. I'm glad they're there. We need them.
Yep.
But man, the people who are financing and pushing these stuff for their benefit, well, if there ain't no money in it.
Yeah, they ain't voting for it.
Yeah. There's a few altruistic people out there.
Very rare.
Not many.
No.
Not many, right? Like,
No.
I'm worried about that.
No, either they got their hands in the production of said products or the tail end said product.
Oh, yeah. Does their company
invested.
own the new manufacturing? Sure, they probably do, right?
Yeah, it's all about the same bullshit that I bitched about during the horrible pandemic cycle, that we were considered, important fucking workers, essential employees, construction. Dude, motherfucker, that's only because the people making those laws were the same people having freaking money invested in buildings.
Not to mention, man, I only ever saw this on 2 signs during the pandemic. And I remember thinking I should have stopped and thanked both those people. A lot of people had those signs during the dark times. Thanks for our heroes out there getting things done. And I saw cops, obviously, firefighters, obviously, nurses, obviously, right?
Mm-hmm.
Went down the line. Teachers, okay, a lot of them were doing Zoom stuff, but okay. Man, I saw a couple of them went all the way down to like dentist. I only saw 2 of those signs that said construction workers.
Yeah.
I was half bitter to the world during that whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
me too.
We don't count? Good.
Yeah.
You can still go to the dentist. That's great. We're keeping the fucking lights on and the water run. Like, come on.
Oh, and by the way, we're still stacked in freaking buildings, assholes to elbows.
Man, 6 feet.
Bullshit.
6 inches.
Yeah.
Our
6
rule was
inches.
6 inches during the pandemic.
Yeah.
If you were lucky, you got 6 inches.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody wearing masks and shit. Like, it's funny to look back now.
It's fucking horrible,
It's
right?
funny to look back now.
It was a fucking joke. But rounding off, I mean, it's the same type of people. They have money invested in shit.
Oh, well, look, folks, if you haven't heard about this yet, check this out. The Irish government, they're talking about getting Irish. Poor John's in a bad way here. He's a little stiff there. He took a funny chop. They're trying to get Irish farmers to lower the emissions from cattle production by 25% by 2030.
Yeah. And they're talking about emissions as cattle farts.
That's cattle
Get
farts.
fucked.
That's what they're saying. Right?
All the way off to the top of Fuck Off Mountain, all of you people dealing with... No.
Yeah. So
No.
here's how bad this went. Okay. Just as an idea, that's about 7 million head of cattle.
Yeah.
That's a lot, right?
That's a lot.
Here's why this is completely fucked. One of these farmers worked with a local college university, just did some basic facts on this, that, and the other thing, delivered this to their government when they were talking about this, and said, hey, if we have 2 less cruise ships on the ocean, we all get to keep our cows.
Yeah.
Well, who owns the cruise ships? But the people in charge making these goddamn decisions. Shut them all up. They tried to say it wasn't a real... that's not a real study. What university did you get this? Do we know any of these people? The guy's like, hey, man, the math is all here. Feel free to get someone you think is smarter to check that shit.
Right. And all that shit disappeared, I guarantee you.
Oh, yeah, it gets caught up in the next news cycle or whatever, right? But you can find that on the internet. The fact that guy just walked in and stonewalled all those people made me fucking laugh. But those are the grand scheme of things. We've talked about this stuff before.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, what the fuck?
What the fuck is right?
Like, I've never understood the whole cow emission scrap, because they're pushing it here in the States too. I'm sorry, guys, but I tell you what, give me a cow every year for the rest of my life, full cow, butchered, done. I'll take one every year off your hands.
Absolutely, I will too, yeah. And I guarantee there's another 7 million people over here be more than happy to do the same thing.
Right.
Yeah. It's
Get fucked.
It's crazy, right?
I'm not going to be a vegetarian. Don't take my beef away.
No, and man, I must admit, I've never watched the show. I'm going to one day. I haven't checked it out yet. The great Kevin Costner one about the ranch and family. Help me out here, buddy. No, you know the one. There's always they are always pulling videos off of Yellowstone. Yellowstone.
Oh, yeah.
There's a
I've
great,
never watched that
See,
show.
I haven't seen it either, but I've seen a great video clip from it. A bunch of times have come across my feed where there's a bunch of environmentalists. They got themselves tied to a tree or a piece of equipment or something, right?
Right.
And he walks out and he breaks it down for one of the women, talking about, what about all the little animals that get killed?
Yeah.
What about all the trees that get taken down for this? He just lays it all out real flat, and I'm sitting back going, they should just play that over and over at every rally forever now.
Yep.
Every time somebody's complaining, like, just watch this 10 times in a row until you go, oh yeah, I'm kind of half an idiot. That's right.
Oh, so, and I loved how he ended that of, so how cute does an animal have to be before you care?
Right. Yeah. See, you've seen the same one, right?
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
It's great.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. So I only mentioned it because that's what this whole thing comes down to me. I did want to talk about this today, but I don't know, man. It seems untenable. It seems like it's going to cost jobs as they try some of these things, but I like the direction that it's going in.
Right.
So do we have to suck up some more change in order for things to get better, as we've all had to do over the years?
Yeah, we are. We're going to have to accept it. It's going to be how things lean.
Okay.
I mean, it's already going that way. I think we have almost a moral responsibility to make sure that we're not cutting corners, that we're not putting in subpar product,
Correct.
that we're not buying subpar product from subpar manufacturers.
To find out that these new construction methods and materials only last for 15 years when the other way lasted 45. And now how does that affect your math?
Right. Yep.
These are the things that we're probably going to figure out going forward in the future here. So
Yep. And I'd really love to pull somebody in. I'd love to have a future conversation with somebody dealing with the green construction.
Hell yeah.
LED certifications, the B3 certification, something. I would love to have, and just pick their brain and just be like, what about this? What about this? Because we can't get into it here. We don't have time left in this episode to go deep into that. But oh my God, man.
That would be interesting to have somebody in, just even if it was just a short little snippet for 15 or 20 minutes where we could pick their brain a bit, although we know it'd have to be longer than that.
Yeah.
So if anybody out there is listening, has gone through any of these certifications to try to get a building built or anything, reach out.
Yep.
Yeah, you can find all the emails on our website at highsoftpodcast.com. We would love to talk to you.
Right.
So,
right.
I don't think we're missing anything from this one, buddy. It was a fun thing to touch on today.
I think we covered
Lessons of the day: stay away from this mycelium fungus thing. It sounds an awful lot like that terrible show, man. Yeah, The Last of Us. I'm worried about that one.
Hey, don't say it's a terrible show. That's a great fucking show.
Oh, sorry. The premise of the plot was like, oh my God, really? The show's fantastic. If you haven't seen that, you should check that out. It's really good. I must admit, I was a little embarrassed. I didn't know until just the other day. That was a video game.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah,
Somebody mentioned like, oh, I played that game. Like, no, I'm talking about the TV show. And the young fellow looked at me like an old man going, yeah.
Yeah, it was a video game first.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, sorry. Fuck me a little bit, I guess. Well, that's it, buddy. I'd like to thank everybody for listening again this week. And John, what do you want to let the people know?
Yeah, you can, find us at the isawpodcast.com on our website there, and you can find all the links to all of our stuff. Sign up, get notifications, get emails. You can also send us a DM on Instagram. We're on there pretty regularly. Maybe not so much posting, but Jason and I tend to doom scroll a lot.
We're around.
Yeah. But then you can call us 507-607-ISAW 4729. So
yeah, please. If you got a minute, even if good, bad, or ugly, leave us a voicemail, send us a text message. We do respond almost right away. We are working for a living, but we will get back to you. And if we find it interesting, or you're a complete crazy person, we'll definitely put it online.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for listening once again here from the Job Trailer. And as always, please remember, be safe out there this week, and your work keeps the world working.
Sláinte.
Sláinte, buddy.